Welcome back to another video in class. This is lesson 53. Is war logical? For those of you in the continuing education portion of this. So when it comes to the title, is war logical? Well, there's people that like to do word play, they like to do letter play and things like that. So let's jumble up the letters in the word war, right? So you have different things that it could spell depending on your perspective and your perception of it, right? So if I were to jumble up the letters, it could spell the word raw, like WWE raw, R-A-W. If you are looking at the letter W and you flip that upside down, now it's the letter M, it could spell the word ram, so on and so forth. And if you remember spirituality and things like that, or you're a Christian and things like that, you remember that God gave Abraham a ram to slay, so on and so forth. If I remember that correctly, it could have been something else, but I'm pretty sure it was a ram that was stuck. All right. Anyways, then you have other things that it could go into, right? So you have AWR, you have ARW, and all these little acronyms and things can literally be, well, something that can be looked up in Google, and I strongly suggest it. I mean, look up WRA, look up AWR, look up ARW. What does it say that it means, right? A ram could be like a pickup truck, right? The war, so on and so forth, etc., because you use a battering ram in times of war to breach the gates, right? So if you drive a truck and you're trying to ram people off the street, so on and so forth, etc., right? But is it logical? See, why does it sound logical is my question. If war sounds logical to you, then clearly you've never been in one, right? You may have been in a psychological one, you may have been in others, or you may have been growing up in a bad environment and that gave you a disdain or bad taste in your mouth. And now you're like wanting to go to war, but then, of course, when things start to pop off, you get scared, right? You could have somebody say, oh, I have the power right upstairs because you have a Glock or whatever. And then when somebody comes in and levels the playing field, all of a sudden you get to see how quickly and how close of an inch and a half you are between changing your persona, right? Because everybody's a lot of talk and a lot of big game without acknowledging certain things because they're not the brightest. And then you got to go reach out to somebody who's going to save you like a superhero. And if that doesn't work, you go out to somebody else so that they can delete evidence, right? So let's get into it, shall we? Point number 2, scramble up the letters and Google the different things that come up when it comes to jumbling up the letters for war. You have RAM, you have AWR, as I mentioned earlier, right? And these are not things that are unknown, because if they were unknown, then you wouldn't be able to research it, right? Now, most of you know my background as a veteran. I've had friends that left on 14 Tech 1, 14 Tech 2, and I've had friends that left on other things, thus when they deployed, so on and so forth, right? 14, the year 2014 of when they left, etc. And, you know, it's one of those things where either you were just around people that did that, or did you actually do it? See, if you were around people that did it and you think you know something about it, well, then you know something about it, but you weren't actually in it, right? It's like this guy that I told, he was a cook in the Army, and I said, don't change your job, don't go active, you don't know exactly what that all entails. Just like when I met this other gentleman who was a reservist who worked at Walmart, and he goes, oh no, they do this, that, and the third. You're still connected to the civilian world. You're not fully active yet. You didn't sign the other contract. You did not read all the legalities and verbiage that reside within it. So correct yourself or read and do research before you decide to make a statement based upon whatever it is you think you know, so on and so forth, right? Now, let's continue. Does Disney not show the world food can be accessed by all, right? And I've sent this out to a couple people, a couple pastors actually, or preachers. Who was it? Pastor Stephen Furtick, I think Keon Henderson. I don't know if I sent it to TD Jakes, but they have a lot of money and they have a lot of resources, a network and friends, so on and so forth. And if they were able, or, well, I don't know who handles their social media either, but if they were able to watch the video on Epcot and how they have vertical farming and how Disney's powered through solar and all these other things. And because of the fact that laws and everything were removed, so on and so forth, due to Disney no longer being its own entity, it's now a part of the United States. That puts it in the public domain. And if it's in the public domain, well, it doesn't violate any secrecy agreement, so it can be replicated, and that means it can lower food costs, it can lower energy costs by mimicking, or as Tony Robbins will like to say, matching and mirroring exactly what they're doing in different locations, providing, well, fresh fruits and vegetables to everybody without GMOs and everything else. And then, of course, expediting the process because you could grow more food on the same square footage because, well, you're growing vertically as well as horizontally. And then, of course, when it comes to the power supply, yeah, I mentioned solar, but if Disney's whole thing is powered through solar, whether it's Epcot or they're doing business deals with Universal or Disney itself, if it's powered through solar and they create their own stuff, and it's literally like a whole city in there, don't you think that if they're able to supply and do all that for all their tourists, that, well, they could take some of the money that they're wasting and experimenting with when it comes to the rest of the United States and do that to help out the populace? Think about it, right? That'll mitigate a lot of stuff. That'll mitigate a lot of frustration, right? That would bring healthy people to the forefront, right? If you want people to work, you don't want them to be sick, right? Now let's move forward. War sounds great until it hits your doorstep. Now, mind you, I got upset during COVID because I stated that they showed their hand, right? They showed their hand. And what do I mean by they showed their hand? When it comes to heart disease, cancer, and all these other things, they magically can't figure anything out. But when COVID-19, or Corona, which then changed to COVID, came out, they magically found a cure within less than, 2 years? Less than a year, give or take? To something that was mysterious, that nobody allegedly knew about? Now, if they're able to do that, aren't they able to cure other things, but they're just not saying anything about it? I had to go to Duke University and speak to the medical professionals over there for them to tell me exactly what they're researching, what cures are out for other things, right? They have cures for HIV. They have cures for AIDS. They have cures for cancer. Are they going to release them? Probably not. Why? Because if you look at cancer and heart disease, it's over $120 billion industry. That's just one, not including stacking them on top of each other. So they're making trillions of dollars off of the sick. That's a little sick. Not to have a wordplay there, but that's a little sick, don't you think? So if you're getting anything out of this right now, go ahead and smash that like button. Don't forget to follow and share, subscribe, and share this with some people and make as many clips as you want and spread it out to the world. I'm going to do a quick mic check. All right, we're still good. So let's continue, right? Everything's great until it shows up at your doorstep, right? So think COVID happened. All right, it showed up at the doorstep, everybody acted a certain way. 9/11 happened, everybody acted a certain way. See, everything sounds like a great idea till it hits your doorstep, right? People run their mouth all the time until it hits their doorstep, or somebody comes to their house, knocks on the door, and it's like, I wasn't expecting you to be here. Or, I heard you had my address, I just didn't know you would actually show up to my house. Do you want to talk now? Or do you want to keep trying to play the intimidation game? Because I have no time for it. Let's move forward. War is based on emotion and justified with logic later, just like marketing decisions, right? And we understand this as marketers, especially if you study psychology. People will make decisions based upon emotion and then justify with logic later. What do I mean? Oh, well, the media is going to portray and have propaganda and tell you stuff that's going to charge you up emotionally. Similarly to, well, how people in the regular world, if they thought you had some type of mental thing, right, they would say, oh, this person, like, for instance, I have a friend of mine, she's depressed all the time. And people that want to, well, manipulate her will speak a certain way. Oh, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. You know, you could turn, instead of treating and understanding exactly what they're doing and trying to make things better, they just make it worse, which I think is stupid and hilarious at the same time, because they think that they're doing something and they don't understand what they're doing. It's similar to, well, if somebody's manic and then you want to piss them off on purpose so that you can then call the police and then say this person's being manic, when in actuality you just triggered them to begin with, right? If I said, oh, this person's homosexual or a fucking lesbian, and then I start bashing them, etc., on being as such, and then they lash out, and then I call the police and say, this person's being manic, etc., I don't know why, and then the cops show up, and then they try to explain, oh, well, they were getting on me because of my sexuality or whatever the case, well, then who the fuck are they going to believe? The person that they set up, or the person with the bullshit that occurred, right? Because the person that called has nothing on them, right? They got away with fucking murder, pretty much. But because they're in the know, they want to teach someone a lesson, etc. You're going to do it my way. Or are you going to, well, ask proper fucking questions instead of just being groomed to do as you're told, law enforcement? Instead of being groomed to do as you're told, individuals. See, the one thing that I appreciate from the military is that we get told to actually ask fucking questions, right? Because if not, you're setting yourself up for failure, and you'll end up in a fucking courtroom either getting stripped of everything, either with a NJP, non-judicial punishment, or going to fucking court-martial. In the civilian world, you could go to court, but if you got pulled with a congressman, a judge, etc., you might get off. But then if the streets take over, then they have to incorporate other things. And then, of course, people will make up as much bullshit as possible to save their own ass. When they know that they were in the wrong, but they just wanted to flex a little bit, right? And then they start freaking out. Why are you still talking? Why are you still doing this? This should have never happened. Bitch, you should have listened the first time, right? But they don't get that until it's literally blunt in their face. Because either they're trying to set something up, or they're just fucking stuck on stupid. Which one is it? You can either listen the first time when you say that you listen, or you can ask questions before your ass ends up continuing where you are. There was a gentleman that I knew that used to joke around. It's like, oh yeah, I went to jail for kids, blah, 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 blah. John F. Kennedy High School or whatever, John F. Kennedy Middle School, whatever. I was like, that's weird, because National University, if I did study law, I'd probably go to National University, and their law school is literally called John F. Kennedy Law School, jail for kids. Do you want to get out of jail, or do you like staying there? You don't care how hard it is. You're going to stay there, right? To what? Prove a point? To prove how hard you are? To be the Frank Gallo in fucking Suits? To show that, oh, I'm not going to do this, etc. You don't want to be free. You want to be stuck, right? You want to be miserable because that's the pattern in which you're used to, right? Let's continue. To subdue your enemy without lifting a finger. This is psychological operations. See, when it comes to psychological operations, you have, well, propaganda, you have media, you have the news, you have marketing, you have medicine, etc. And if people are failing to do their job, or they abuse of power, or dereliction of duty, or something within the U.S. Code, either 1847, etc., violating telecommunications, communications, or something else, well, there's going to be an issue, or even 46 or 42. But if you don't understand those things, and you don't know about them, because most people are not unintelligent, they're just uninformed. And then when they become informed, they go out and they reach out to their little friends in their network to try to help them unfuck their situation that they got themselves into. So is war something that you guys want? Because there needs to be a congressional hearing to send everybody in. It's like taxes. You can only send up to, I think, 10,000 people at a time in a certain time frame to a certain location in order to handle a situation before everybody else got to go ahead and be filled in, or war has to get declared on a grand scale, since you want to send more than that many people. They've been talking about hitting their quotas as far as enlistments are concerned. They've been upping the price on fuel. I don't know how something that's happening in the Middle East is affecting fuel prices here. It shouldn't. They're stocking a war chest for a reason. I mentioned something a long time ago when I looked stuff up, and some genius on stage was like, the only reason you do that is because we're going to go to war. Bitch, really? So you don't raise stock prices, you don't raise taxes, have everything else to stockpile, not only on finances, but to, well, then start recruiting heavily. If you ever played a video game, so on and so forth, that was more so strategic, like StarCraft, Warcraft, whatever the case may be, you know that you're going to need to recruit people to defend the base. And you need a certain amount of people to do it, etc., and you need minerals and resources. Have you not put two and two together, or that's what you want, right? Oh, I want to see the sky do this. It's like this kid that I work with. He's like, oh, I want to do this. And there was another veteran there, and he goes, have you ever done something like that? He goes, no, I just want to try it one time. Keep it up, Cupcake, because if we go and there's a draft, you might get your chance. Because you're so fucking curious, right? Excuse my language. This is for educational purposes, but I have to come through a certain way, right? And if you remember the other lessons when I spoke about voice, pitch, tonality, and everything else, before this gets depicted as something else or as such, well, I will change my pace, I will change my tone, I will change other things so that people don't try to finagle the mind when trying to explain what's being said. The illusion of good, right? The actual, hold on. The illusion of good versus the actual good ones. How to tell the difference, right? Well, you have the 7 sins. Those are relatively there. It's like a little pamphlet, right? So if people start feeding into those things like greed, gluttony, and all these other stuff, first of all, you have to understand what the fuck it means, so on and so forth, because people could see someone who's heavy set, not ask any question, be like, oh, they're gluttonous. No, they could have a thyroid issue. Or they see somebody with money. Oh, they're greedy. No, they could just be very studious and read and made their money properly, etc. Or they may be in a different type of world or a different type of life, and they made their money by being savvy, right? And then, of course, there is vanity, right? Look at me, look at me, look at me. That's social media, right? And there's other ones, right? So that's a little barometer that you can utilize when it comes to looking at the good people versus the actual good people. There's people that'll tell you that they're good. And then there's some that are actually good that are just, they keep getting screwed over by the ones that tell you that they're good. When in actuality, they're the ones screwing over the good ones. Because they're scared to come out into the open or have everybody find out their secret, right? See, most people would hear the saying, April showers bring May flowers, or somebody may like rain, but somebody gets real jolly around Christmas, right? And jolly rhymes with something, doesn't it? To win a war, not a battle or conflict, one must first understand that death is real, just as chaos. So plan for that, not just what might happen, right? If you got emotionally triggered because the last statement that I made registered on a psychological level with somebody or an individual or individuals that you might know, or the holiday season, you're not the only person on the block that does what you do. You just have gravitas and bravado, and you have a network that you leveraged against somebody who was told to let you fucking do it so you could get caught. What is invisible to some is very apparent to others. Do not sacrifice yourself when others depend upon you. If you're going to go out there like Leonidas, right? Knowing that Leonidas ended up dying in the Battle of Thermopylae, right? Because you're saving other people. Well, then Boo Boo, go right for it, right? And if you're thinking of the movie 300, he wore the red cape. And so if I wanted to trigger somebody politically, would I say that, oh, Leonidas was a Republican? That's why he wore the red cape. And then in Rise of the Empire, well, that guy was a Democrat because he wore a blue cape, right? That makes logical sense, right? Or does it? Or maybe it has a different meaning and you just never chose to ask a fucking question, so therefore you're just led to believe whatever somebody tells you because people only know what you're told. Because they're lazy. So let's continue. Learn from 300, right? And just to remind you, I'm putting this in a certain sequence, not just because I need notes, but a sequence so that you understand, right? Learn from the movie 300. No sons were supposed to go with their fathers because of the mission. There was no return, right? The cards lied, right? So if somebody's like, oh, these are not oracle cards, they're angel cards, or they're other cards, right? Well, Leonidas went to the oracles and the oracles lied, right? It's like messing with somebody who's messing with tarot cards or angel cards or whatever, and they lied, right? And if they lied because they passed whatever, somebody would say A levels. Yeah, that's great for school, but in the military context, that's like Air Force and Army, and you got to confuse and mix them up, or you got by them because you were psychologically playing them. So you got by A levels, right? Because they both begin with the letter A. To go to a master's class, go hang out with some Marines and see how fast you fail. Let's continue. Now, why weren't sons allowed to join? But there was one that ended up going, right? Because he was of age and he really wanted to go. The father signed up and they all ended up dying, right? That's like you getting into an industry and now your son's following in your footsteps, not understanding the consequences that come along with the great power, right? What did Uncle Ben say from Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility. But if they're just seeing you flex, they're seeing you do other things, they're seeing you be retarded, and they go take that to another area where it's not only highly respected, but some people actually do stuff when it comes to disrespecting that culture, right? Or whatever it is that you're doing. Then you knowingly put them in danger without training them properly. So let's continue. Use the invisible as in part 2, right? After trying for peace, right, or pace, or paz in Spanish, P-A-C-E. If you study Tai Lopez, it's like the disc profile, but different. If you saw that movie on Netflix where the Marine was like, pace, that's what you're going to have to worry about now, right? Everybody wants peace, but they don't actually want it, right? They keep poking the bear or poking the button without actually reading because history doesn't repeat itself. So use the invisible as in part 2, right, of 300. After trying for peace, didn't work. Then move with swiftness that would even make the universe shake and be happy to have you exist. Now, what does this mean? I don't know if you remember the second part of 300, Rise of an Empire, but he tried for peace. He tried to negotiate. They even slept together, so on and so forth. They still wanted to go to war. What they had was not enough. They wanted more. This was a sign of gluttony along with a couple other things, but they were tyrants, right? And Xerxes was not about to have it. He wanted to dominate everything and be like this grand ruler, right? So because of that, they had to move with swiftness, and they brought the whole military into the situation. So think about that for a second. Why would I say, after trying for peace and that doesn't work, then move with a swiftness that would make the universe shake and be happy to have you exist? Well, because you're correcting the imbalance within the universe. After a certain allotted amount of time, there's something called, trends, patterns, so on and so forth. And once those get established and, evidence gets laid out, then You have to move with haste, right? And the way to do that is just to backtrack everything that they falsely documented or incorrectly documented that could be quickly pointed out, and it'd be an open shut case. So let's continue. They pretend. You execute like the storm that comes in the time that you sleep. All right. So as they pretend, you execute like the storm that comes while you rest. Right. As you can see, it's really windy right now. If you're off today and taking a nap, I know I did earlier because I was. It started to rain, but you don't realize that it's raining until you wake up, right? You didn't realize, you thought you were okay up until the time in which that you had to wake up, right? Are you woke? Are you awake? Here, I thought you went to awake to see if somebody would wake up or if they were woke and they were just pretending. Mic check. So let's continue. Only then will some, now and later, will understand how backwards the world is. If you were to travel to a different location, let's say China, whatever the case may be, another, place, another industry, another, whatever, right? And you were to realize that it's not only different, but it's something that, well, you should have understood, but you didn't. It's something that could have helped you, but you chose not to listen to it. It's something that, well, you said you wanted help, but you really didn't want help, which I think is interesting and hilarious. It's something that, well, a lot of people would say, well, why didn't you go further? Why didn't you explain more? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you ask questions? Proper questions. Why did you just sit in the background? Why did you just do as you're told? In psychology, as well as within magic, if I know you are trained and groomed a certain way, I can utilize that to my advantage. Oh, police are trained this way. So if they're only trained to do as they're told, then they're only going to listen to authority. And in order for them to listen to authority, they're going to need either a piece of paper or a badge or a rank. This is why I would tell people during my time in the military, when I worked security at the ASP at truck checkers, people would try to pull rank that did not understand certain things. Even though I was in charge of the section and things like that, I would still have people pull rank. They didn't care. They didn't know. And I'd say, you know what? Fucktard, you stay right here. I'm going to go find somebody that you do respect. And I would either go grab Gunny, I would grab Master Guns or somebody else. And they would be like, oh, why did you say this to this person? Bitch, because I tried to tell you the first fucking time and you didn't get it. The second and third time you didn't get it. I had to go over the top now and go grab somebody that you do respect so that you can hear it and get it the first fucking time, right? Because that's how your training was, right? That's how you were brought up, right? That's what you respect, right? That's what you were taught, right? Yes. Just shake your head yes if you're listening. And then, of course, they would go ahead and say, well, didn't he just say this? Yeah. So then why were you fucking pulling rank? Oh, well, I just didn't. You didn't respect his words. You didn't want to understand. Hence why he had to get somebody that you do respect, right? Somebody with something shiny on their collar. Somebody with more rank. Somebody with paperwork that can show you, oh, this person has credentials that can tell you to shut the fuck up and pay attention, right? Most people aren't trained that way because they're not taught a certain way. Shocking, I know, but it's extremely true. I had to do this several times, right? But several different individuals. I try to tell them something. Oh, nobody knows. I think I was watching the TV show Preacher with somebody. And they're like, oh, nobody knows why this guy does this. And in my head, I'm like, because they never fucking listened the first time. They might as well just shut up and walk away or leave. Nobody knows why he just gets quiet and walks away. Because you didn't get it. You didn't ask questions. You just, etc. And then I was watching something else, and either timing was off or something, and the bad guy in Librarian, somebody was like, oh, that looks like so-and-so. I was like, you're saying you're the bad guy? So you're trying to bust into the library? What are you trying to do? And if that's the person that you go to see if you went too far, then are you Jafar in the movie Aladdin, or are you the Sultan that's hoping that Aladdin saves the day? Who knows? But remember, when Aladdin saved the day, or when Aladdin was with Jasmine, she wore blue to round robin back to, well, 300 Rise of an Empire. When Jafar took over, she wore red. And there was a cobra snake somewhere in there. I don't know why, but it was. It was like the scepter of Jafar, etc. But it also goes within spirituality and everything else. So please watch that if you have time to. Pay attention to it. Notice the differentiation in color. And if you want to have a lot of fun, go and study history, because back in the day, Republicans used to believe in what Democrats believe in, and Democrats used to believe in what Republicans believe in. So they're literally purple on both sides. So if you're upset because you found out somebody didn't vote, why don't you do your fucking research in history first and realize that aspect first, and then you'll understand certain things. Remember, liberty cracked with a nail, right? There's a nail in the Liberty Bell. How did that happen? Think about it. You can either watch The Sound of Music or hope to God the sound of freedom is somewhere beyond the horizon. So hopefully with these 13 points, you understand not only my perspective, but where I'm coming from, the aspects that I like to cover in this continuing education, and as we move forward with a couple other things. But as we move forward, I mean, we're going to be talking about other stuff, right? And for lesson 54, the title of that would be, what's the point of class without emotion? I mean, think about it. If you couldn't hear the tonality, the pitch, the musicality in music, or whatever the case may be, within a movie, a TV show, or whatever you're watching right now, right? Would you believe it? Would you feel what the other person's feeling? Would you understand? Would you even care to? I don't know, but in the movie The 13th Warrior, everybody started to freak out when Antonio Banderas responded, and they asked him, how did you learn how we speak in our language? And he leaned in and said, I listened. And if you remember anything from paying attention to understand, listening is hearing with the intent to understand. So until another lesson, ladies and gentlemen, or lesson 54, I will see you next time. Peace.